What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Shell Houston Open DFC on the Green. I'm Jason Gilbo. With me is Chris Etherington, taking a look at some DraftKings picks for this week. You and I thrilled that we're kind of back into a larger name pool here after kind of a lackluster crowd last week.
Yeah, this week is going to be back to normal with your exposures. Last week, I was better off just to watch the Dell Nash play, just to watch DJ taking it down on the weekend. As for the Puerto Rico Open, I mean, the weather was in play pretty much all throughout the week, and it was a brutal Sunday with only about 2% guys having six out of six guys going through for Sunday. So very glad, very happy that this week is back to normal, back to full field event. And yeah, it shouldn't have no worries with the weather. Maybe Saturday might be a little wet, but that might be it.
Yeah, I mean, weather, you said Saturday, possibly an issue, but really nothing out of the ordinary here. Masters tune-up, and we were talking before, they kind of try and play this course like an Augusta style. How do you view it? I mean, I know I see some of these golfers come out and say, oh, I'm going to work on this and that. And do you see them really shooting for a win, or do you see them just kind of to play things a little bit safe and work on things?
Yeah, I think for the most part, the top guys will use this week as a tune-up for next week, because the staff here in Houston, they tend to simulate this course to the best of their ability, basically compare it better to the Augusta, so that way the guys have a better preparation for next week. But for the top guys, I think most of them are just here or just to basically fine-tune their stuff that they're working on for next week. You just kind of have to pick and choose at the top and try to find some value underneath.
Yeah, and I mean, looking at lineup construction this week, diving in, I kind of looked and was like, all right, a balanced approach seems okay this week. I think that's my preferred one, but you can also kind of go stars and scrubs in tournaments. I mean, it kind of sets up both ways here.
Yeah, DraftKings has kind of set up this pricing very similar to next week, where you could go pretty much either way. It's going to be a little difficult picking Spieth at the top, but you can still manage to pick six guys that you like for the week. For me personally, yeah, I think a solid balanced approach would be a good way to go for this week.
Yeah, and Spieth at 12K, up there in price, and then we get into Jon Rahm, Stenson, Fowler as your other double-digit price guys. Fowler's the guy that you're looking at out of that group.
Yeah, I like to start Fowler for my cash games for this week, being the cheapest guy of the four. Luckily for us, we don't have to ponder on whether to play DJ or not for this week. He already WD'd. So the ownership will be more spread out, I think, at the top. With that being said, I think Jon Rahm is going to be the most popular play of the week because he is cheaper than Spieth, and with his play last week, I think more people will go to him. For me, I really like Fowler. Mainly, it's recent form that really caught my attention. He won at the Honda. He only has one missed cut in his last six. So he's on form. He's playing better than last year. And I think being at 10,000, we're getting a nice little value savings for him.
Yeah, I mean, outside of the Farmers Insurance, he's been really solid. And as you said, cheapest of that group. As far as Stenson goes in the middle there, not really a guy that I'm on. I know not really a guy you're looking at either.
Yeah, he's a guy that I'm just going to basically just watch this week and see how he does. He did screw a lot of people withdrawing a couple weeks ago. And then after withdrawing in Mexico, he was basically hit or miss, miscut, and basically a top 10 performance after that. So being at 10-4, he's a little expensive. He's a little risky for this week. So I think I'm just going to fade and just wait and see on how he plays for the week.
Yeah, definitely got I'll keep an eye on. Not going to have a lot of exposure to, if any. Moving down the list, I mean, I don't know about you, but I kind of glossed over this 9K range. I mean, you got Justin Rose, JB Holmes, Adam Scott, Matt Kuchar. Holmes won here 2 years ago, but I kind of went right down to Mickelson, Henley.
Yeah, in this range, I was kind of basically trying to compare Rose and Scott and Holmes and Kuchar kind of separate and trying to pick and choose on which ones I would actually play. I think out of Rose and Scott, they're pretty much a similar player. They just need to putt average, and more than likely they'll win or they'll finish in the top 5. But Scott hasn't played here since 2010, I think, was his most recent performance. And for Rose, he played here back in 2015. So I think that was the reason for me to go to Rose, was because he played here the most recently of the two. And I just kind of like Holmes over Kuchar, just because Kuchar is just not playing like he used to be last year and the year before that. This year, he's just a little off with his irons. So I'm just going to, just like Stenson, I'm just going to wait and see how he plays. And maybe I'll play him for next week. Next week, he's pretty cheap. So I'm just going to watch him play. And if he plays well this week, then he's pretty much all in for me for next week.
Yeah, and I mean, it's not like I didn't like those guys when I was going through the list. I mean, I think Holmes is probably my preferred play out of the 4 there, playing really well this year. It was just like I see Mickelson, and we were talking about couple course history guys here that are just going to be probably logging a lot of ownership, one, because of course history, but they also been playing pretty well this year.
Yeah, Phil is getting into form after finishing dead last at Pebble Beach. He is the course horse for this week. Everyone's going to play him. He won here back in 2011, and his worst finish was 35th in 2010. So after that, I mean, he actually finished inside the top 20 on all of them. So he's just going to be a very popular play at 8,900. The other guy that seems to play well here is Russell Henley. Henley has finished in the top 10 3 of his previous tries here. Last year he finished 5th, and he finished 4th the year before that. So both those guys being less than 9,000, they're just going to be a very popular play for the week.
Yeah, I mean, those 2 guys are going to be popular. I like them quite a bit. And we were talking about Daniel Berger, who's smushed in between those guys. And, we're having a conversation thinking ownership could be pretty low on him, but it also could kind of go the other way, just depending on really how much buzz he gets around Twitter, around the other sites, because he always seems to be a guy people will toss out as a popular GPP option.
Yeah, Berger is that guy that everyone does know. Like, he's no secret. There is a reason why he is up there beside Phil. I mean, he's only played here twice. He finished 5th last year. But when you look at his recent form, he missed like 3 cuts in his last 6. So you're rarely taking a chance on a guy that's pretty close to 9,000. And he's barely hitting half of his screens right now. So He's very risky, but if you want to take a pivot and fade Phil and Henley, then I think Berger could be a very nice pivot for the week.
Yeah, definitely a tournament only guy, and looking at him as a pivot or a guy to maybe play with one or two of them. Um, as far as other guys in this price range, I mean, Charles Howell, always a guy that we tend to talk about. Not playing as well as he was earlier in the season, 8,500. Does have 3 top tens here in the last 4, but did miss a cut as well. I mean, what do you think of him this week?
Yeah, he's still a fine play, but like you said, recently he's just sort of falling off the face of the earth a little bit. It could be a good week to start thinking about fading him. Just to see what happens. He's barely hitting the greens over 60% of the time. So with that, and with this last 3 tournaments, going back to the Honda, he's been pretty close to dead last. Yeah, he's been making the cuts, but he hasn't really been meeting value at all. So I'm still on the fence on playing him for the week, but I think in the end I may start fading him, and see if he turns it around.
And he's also at a price tag that we're, at times we've seen him in the 7K range, low 7Ks, mid 7Ks. That seems to be a little bit more appropriate for what he's been doing of late, not 8,500.
Right. Like if we were going back, say in the beginning of the year, and he was at 8,500, then for sure play him, because he was always on point with his irons between January and February. And then for some reason, he's just, like I say, he's falling off a little bit. If he was about 500, 700 cheaper, then he probably would have made my core list for the week. But for this week, I may play him probably around 20% of the time for my lineups, and just move on from there.
And a guy that is about 600 cheaper, RCB, who you like at 7,900, hasn't missed a cut this year.
Yeah, he's basically, if you want to call him this, the CH3 for the week. Being priced at 7,900, I think is a good value for Mr. Bayo. So he played here once before, and that was last year. He finished 4th. And if you look at his recent form, I mean, he finished 5th a couple weeks ago at the Indian Open. And then before that, it's been making a cut and finishing in basically inside the top 20. He's just a very consistent player this year. So I think at 7,900 for this week is very good value, especially if we're used to paying him over 10,000 in some cases.
And that's why, I mean, looking at the balanced approach this week, I mean, he's kind of one of those guys where you can definitely plug in because a little bit cheaper. And with Mickelson, Henley, not being that expensive, it kind of all pairs well together.
Right, exactly. I mean, there's a lot of guys in this range where you will find the values down here. So if you could just try and maybe pick one guy at the top and just sort of pick and choose in the upper 8s, and from there just pick almost everyone, not everyone, but most of these guys around the 8,000 mark I think is the way to go.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking at this week. I mean, moving down just a little bit. What are your thoughts on Patrick Reed? I mean, 7,700 hasn't missed a cut either. Hasn't been great, but I mean, kind of serviceable for the price, I guess you could say.
Yeah, with Reed, I think this might be the week to start, sort of like Charles a little bit, to start thinking about fading for the week. He's just been a little off pretty much the entire season, from basically ever since he had that dual match with McElroy at the Ryder Cup. After that, he's just been a little off. But yeah, I mean, with his recent form, it's been either middle of the pack or towards dead last for this year. He is going to be popular just because of the name and because of his price. He is very cheap for what we're used to paying him. So I think this might be the week to start fading him and wait for the basically for the upside to come around again, where we can play him when everyone else has been basically burned by him.
I think with Jimmy Walker being right there at 7,600, I mean, being only Monday, Walker might be a guy that creeps more into my lineups as we go on throughout the week. One, I mean, you've mentioned it here on the pods before, where he does tend to play well here in Texas alone, just throughout numerous tournaments, and a cheaper price tag, and he's coming around a little bit.
Yeah, just like Phil, he's basically a course horse for this week. He's made the cut his last 3 attempts here. He finished 19th last year. And then when you look at his recent form, yeah, he's been very solid his last 4 tournaments. He hasn't missed a cut. And then he finished 11th at the Genesis. And yeah, I think Walker is one of those guys that tend to play well in the win and also at Texas. And we're just getting to that swing where he could be a guy where he'll be a most players core for the week. And at 7,600, I think he's just a fine value for the week.
Yeah, I know another guy that you're looking at, and Vegas here, 7,300. Another guy, I mean, hasn't missed a cut and been a really consistent option this year.
Yeah, he's been really consistent with his iron play. He's basically just above average on the tour right now. When you look at his course history, he only has 1 missed cut back in 2011, and then he finished 19th last year. And then when you look at his recent form, he finished 4th at the Honda and 15th at the Genesis. And like you said, he hasn't missed a cut at all this season. So, and like I said, with the other guys at 7,300 for Vegas, he's just another guy that's just a nice value, almost like a plug and play for the week, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of reasonable 7K options. I mean, Jason Duffner is another one at 7,100. I don't mind using him this week, and that's what I mean. I mean, if you do want to bounce down the low 7Ks and do pay up for 2 high-priced guys, I mean, it's certainly viable.
Yeah, like there's Duffner and also 20 Finau. I mean, those 2 guys are just a lot cheaper than what we're used to paying those guys. Like they're usually about 1,000, 1,500 or so more than what we're used to. But yeah, if you just pick, say, those 2 guys and then pick maybe either Spieth or Fowler, you can still manage to get most guys in the sevens, mid-7 range, and still have a really good, solid cash lineup for the week.
As far as below 7K guys, I mean, did anyone stand out on your radar? I mean, basically because Duffner is right there, and because Vegas is right there as well, I didn't tend to look a lot lower. I think there was only one name that popped up on my radar.
Yeah, for me, I kind of like JT Poston at 6,600. He's been, like Vegas, about average on the tour, maybe just above average for hitting his greens. He is a rookie, but he has been on form for this year. He finished 10th last week at the Puerto Rico, and then he finished 14th the week before that. So at 66, if he does the same thing for this week, then I don't think he's going to be too popular, maybe around 6-7% range. but that's okay. I think if he finished inside the top 15, that'll be an awesome value of the week.
My guy I was looking at, I mean, Bernd Weisberger was a guy, I mean, 2 top 5s here on the Euro this season, hitting his greens at a reasonable rate. Cheap, I mean, definitely some upside, but I mean, a little bit of risk, obviously, with no course history here.
Yeah, basically he only played her once, and he was basically in the middle of the pack last year. But yeah, Wiesberger, I really like for this week and also for next week. He was one of the first guys I looked into for the Masters. He finished third at the Malaysia tournament, and then in between there, he basically finished inside the top 30, top 40 range. So being less than 7,000, that's basically all you're looking for. Is a guy that can make the cut and has the upside to actually finish inside the top 5, basically the top 10.
Yes, I mean, if you're looking stars and scrubs, he's a guy I definitely don't mind. Anyone that you feel we glossed over or didn't mention?
I mean, the only guy I'm really looking into for me is possibly Nick Watney at 8,100. He's been hitting his greens very well at 66% in his past 6 weeks or so. Recently, for his course history, he's played here twice, finishing inside the top 30 both times. So, and for a guy that's basically recovering from a injury from last year, he's really getting into form now. He has 3 top 15 finishes in his last 4. So I think at 8,100, he's another guy, again, that is a great value for the week.
Yeah, if you want a guy or bet on a guy to basically, finish T14 exactly, he's done it 3 out of the last 4 tournaments.
Right. So, and then, like I said, at 8,100, he's definitely surpassing his value by doing that.
Yes, I mean, that 7K range, I mean, the more we kind of broke it down, just seems actually fairly loaded.
Exactly. Like if you basically go by the stats that I'm looking for, which is usually just your greens and your reason for your course history, then basically between the 7,900 range, all those guys, they're in really good form right now for the most part, and most of them, they're hitting their greens over 60% of the time. So from there, you just basically pick and choose your favorite ones and go from there.
Yeah, definitely a lot of options in the 7K range. If you want to check out Chris's article, you can head over to DaveFantasyCafe.com and check out his core for the week, which obviously features these guys that we talked about. But maybe if you just want to get a written look, you can definitely go there. And be sure to check out our optimizer as well. And we'll be on the next week.